What should one do if they have doubts about one of the 13 principles of faith?
There's the story with Reb Mendel Futterfass, which tells you everything you need to know. Reb Mendel Futterfass went on Mivtzoyim, and he asked an Israeli to put on tefillin. So he told him, Ani lo ma'amin be'elokim, I don't believe in God. So Mendel, without a hesitation, said, Ani lo ma'amin, shata lo ma'amin be'elokim. I don't believe that you don't believe in God. Not believing the 13 principles of faith is the same thing as saying I'm not a Jew. In other words, one of the ideas which is very, very important and true al pi Torah, that all form is based on higher than form. All reality is based on higher than reality. To using intellect as an example, all ideas are based on axioms. Ideas of logic conform to laws. The laws are not logical, the laws are facts. When you are able to study a certain chokhmah, you have to accept certain premises as the basis for your ability to study those ideas. But the laws which set up your ability to learn are not part of the learning, they're just truths. They're called axioms, they're called anochas. If a person cannot accept the anochas, the shayness, he can't learn. And it's not a logical process by which you come to accept those anochas and shayness. You just accept them because they're truisms. Now when you say that you accept something as a truism without understanding it, because if you don't accept those truisms, you can't understand anything, there's something very, very deep here. Either I'm being tricked, I'm being duped, I'm being forced to accept a Baba Maise, so that on the basis of that Baba Maise, we can build a whole system. Or I'm being forced to accept something which is an absolute truth, which is going to set up my ability to understand and learn. How do we know the difference? And there's really one answer. When you say that the basis for knowledge is axioms that comes from before knowledge, those axioms you know in your nefesh. You have a soul. Your soul is true. Your soul is a piece of God. Your soul is infinite. The infinity of your soul knows absolute truths in absolute ways. And that's the basis for all the knowledge that follows. And the same is true in Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit is a way of life. And the way of life in Yiddishkeit is very rich and very beautiful and very successful and also very logical. But the basis for this life is faith. And faith you cannot learn, you cannot develop, you cannot analyze, you either have it or you don't. If a person practices Yiddishkeit and he has no faith, besides for the fact that there's something wrong with his religion, he's not even enjoying Yiddishkeit. The wholesomeness of Yiddishkeit is that the logical, orderly system of life as a Jew is predicated on beliefs which come before. So, when a person has a problem with Emunah, it's a very, very, very serious thing. It's a very, very serious thing for a couple of reasons. First of all, you can't have weaknesses in Emunah. You can say, I don't understand this Gemara. I don't want to do this mitzvah. But if a person, Emunah cannot be deficient. Emunah has to be healthy. And it has to be healthy in all the 13 principles of faith, like the Rabbi says in the Sichos. If you don't believe in all 13 principles, you have a problem even with the first principle. So Emunah doesn't have a gray, it's a black or a white. And when a person struggles with Emunah, you cannot resolve it philosophically. People think, prove it. If a person says, I don't believe this, prove it to me. So you either can prove it to them or you cannot prove it to them. But proving it to them doesn't make them a believer, it makes them an intellectual. Because faith means that this truth I know not from my mind, this truth I know from my neshama. In other words, Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah are based on the idea that there is Emunah. What is the meaning of Emunah? Truths that we know without having to learn them, truths that we know without having to be taught, because those truths are us. That's what faith is. And it's so sad to find people, including Lubavitchers and including Hasidim, particularly students, young adults, whether they're single or already married, who are intelligent, and they're discovering their own mind, and the secular world has invaded their brain, and has put them in a position to question not the meaning of a piece of Gemara or the understanding of a Maimon Hasidus, but the foundations of Yiddishkeit, which is Emunah. And they find themselves in a situation where they may be very intelligent, they may be very frum, they may be great scholars, and their foundation is beginning to corrode. Emunah is not something you can gamble with. When you read and you hear how the Rebbe opposed so vehemently and so passionately and so radically young people getting a secular education and going to college. The Rebbe had no problem with Chochmah Chassidim. The Rebbe had a problem with young people particularly. Why? Because the Rebbe understands that a young person is not yet gestellt. His identity is questionable. He's intellectually smart, but his soul, his neshama, his core is deficient. Until a person's core is deficient, when you expose him to doubts and to questions, you can create weakness, you can create vulnerability on the very base level of Yiddishkeit, which can take a lifetime to correct, and in many cases is impossible to correct. So here's the answer to the question. Number one, a Jew is a believer, that's a fact. And when a Jew says he doesn't believe, he has difficulty with beliefs, it's a klipa, it's a ruach shtus, something outside of him is affecting a deficiency in that emunah. And number three, you have to heal it and correct it. And you don't heal it and correct it with philosophy. It's a very big mistake to think when a person has a doubt and he asks a question, if he can answer the question, the doubt is going to go away. It's not the way it works. First of all, there's always a second question. And even if there's not a second question, you don't bring the Eibishter into your heart by speaking to the mind. And to be sure, I use the word heart, I don't really mean to use heart. You don't bring the Eibishter into your soul by addressing question of the mind. It's external, it's outside of the nefesh. What do you have to do to strengthen Emunah? I'll give you examples of Asay Tev, and I'll give you examples of Sur Minah. To strengthen Emunah, you have to be involved with the Rebbe. Because the Rebbe is a factory of Emunah. He's Ure'ei Emunah. Pashat, look at his picture from time to time and visualize the Rebbe's image. Listen to him sing. I know a girl who told me that she dated somebody who was a big misnagid, and he spoke very, very inappropriately about the Rebbe. And she didn't know what to do, so she went to the Amshinava Rebbe, I think. The Amshinava or the Lelav Rebbe. And she asked him if she could marry him. And he said, don't marry him because he's not a Yiras Shamayim. A Yiras Shamayim couldn't speak this way. And then he told her that Avas Yisrael, you should get him a tape of the Rebbe saying, the Rebbe singing, Tzama L'chon Nafshi, maybe you'll get a little Yiras Shamayim. The Rebbe is the source of Emunah. The Rebbe's picture, the Rebbe's singing, the Rebbe's Torah, and above all else, the Rebbe's Torah. When you do those things that connect you to the Rebbe injects you with Emunah. Another thing which is a very important means of strengthening Emunah is to participate in Chassidish Fabrengens. And Chassidish Fabrengen don't mean places where people sit around and eat chips and make jokes. Chassidish Fabrengen means an environment which is warm and together and faith-based, where the people in that room are sincere, not cynical. And when you participate with other people who sing and talk, and that's a dav elakushas bepshitus, it's effective for those people who have doubts. What things should you not do? So first of all, before you go to the Rebbe told somebody once before you go to bed, don't read a newspaper. Don't watch movies. Don't be involved in chitzenias. Particularly before you go to sleep at night. The last thing you do before you go to bed at night should be holy and pure rather than secular. And you should understand the sakona of being open-minded. You should understand the idea that you can ask any question. It's a dangerous thing. It's not like there aren't any answers. Is it because the answers are not the solution? You have to first build your core, then you can ask. And purify yourself. Stop engaging in intellectual machinations that are entertaining, that are interesting, that are stimulating, that make you feel smart, that separate you from your neshama, because faith is far more important than whatever ego satisfaction you're going to get from those endeavors. And maybe, I'm not a person to say this, but check the tefillin, check the mezuzahs, check the kashrus. Be careful about Chalav Yisrael, be careful about Bishul Yisrael, be careful about Pas Yisrael. All of these spiritual things help a person have more emunah.